I used to scroll endlessly, refreshing, tapping, consuming, yet feeling emptier with each swipe. I couldn't finish a book and silence made me anxious. But then I made one change that brought everything back into focus: digital minimalism. In this video, I'll share how embracing digital minimalism helped me reconnect with the simple joy of reading and fall in love with silence again. Part 1. The noise I didn't know I was drowning in. For the longest tempo of my modern life, I didn't realize I was drowning. Not in water, but in noise, digital noise. The kind that masquerades as connection, information, productivity, but really just pulls you further from yourself. My mornings began with the cold blue light of a screen, inches from my face, my thumb instinctively refreshing apps as if some essential truth was waiting for me behind the next scroll. Before I even left my bed, I had already consumed more data than my mind could meaningfully process. Notifications, endless headlines, status updates from people I hadn't seen in years. It all flooded in like static, numbing me before the day had even begun. I called it catching up, but in truth I was falling behind on my thoughts, my presence, my peace. Every moment of stillness was quickly filled with stimulation. Waiting for a friend, check Instagram, 5 minutes between meetings, scroll through Twitter. Even during walks outside, I had earbuds in, feeding myself a non-stop stream of podcasts, music, or news. Silence became intolerable. Boredom felt like failure. I feared empty spaces in time, as if they might reveal something I wasn't ready to face. And then there was reading, something I once loved, now reduced to a frustrating exercise. I would sit down with a book, full of intention, only to find myself drifting. My fingers twitched for my phone. My concentration would snap after a few paragraphs. I'd read and reread the same sentence until the words blurred and lost their meaning. It wasn't that I had no time to read. It was that my brain had forgotten how to slow down long enough to absorb anything deeper than a caption. What was happening, I later realized, was a kind of mental fragmentation. My attention had been sliced into microscopic fragments constantly, redirected by algorithms designed to hijack my focus. Every beep, buzz, or red dot triggered a Pavlovian response in me, a compulsion to respond, to check, to not miss out. The irony was that I was missing out on everything real. Conversations felt shallow, time with loved ones was punctuated by screen glances. Even moments meant for rest were invaded by the low-grade anxiety of needing to stay connected. I had become uncomfortable in my own stillness, and yet I didn't think I had a problem. Because this is how everyone lives now, right? We're all just busy, plugged in, trying to keep up. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I wasn't okay with the fact that my capacity for silence, reflection, and real focus had atrophied. I missed the version of me who could get lost in a story for hours, who could sit on a park bench and just be, without needing to do something. That part of me hadn't vanished. It had been buried beneath pings, pixels, and endless passive consumption. I hadn't noticed the weight of it all until it became too heavy to carry without consequence. Part 2. The turning point, a digital cleanup. The change didn't come suddenly. It started with a subtle discomfort, a silent dissatisfaction that I couldn't name, but that grew every time I turned off my cell phone at night, feeling like I hadn't done anything real. I was always busy, but never present, always informed, but never at peace. It was in this state of mental exhaustion that I came across the concept of digital minimalism presented by Cal Newport. The idea was simple but radical. Remove all digital excesses from your life for a while and see what's left. I felt an immediate fear. What would I do with so much free time? Who would I be without constant distraction? These questions scared me, and that's when I realized I had to try. I decided to start with a 30-day digital detox. No social media, no news apps, no quick videos or useless notifications. just the essentials, important emails and direct messages. On the first day, I realized how ingrained the habit was. I found myself reaching for my phone every few minutes out of habit, only to realize there was nothing there, no feeds, no notifications, no escape. I felt anxious, restless, even irritable. My brain, accustomed to a constant diet of digital dopamine, seemed to crave stimulation. At first, the silence was uncomfortable. The minutes felt longer, the days felt slower, but it was precisely in this slowness that the magic began. In the second week, I noticed that my focus was improving. I was able to do one task at a time without that constant urge to take a quick look at something. I started to notice small things, sounds from the street, sunlight coming through the window, my own breathing. My thinking slowed down, and with it, my emotions became clearer. The constant irritation I felt began to give way to a quiet calm. For the first time in a long time, I was truly with myself. No noise, no distractions, no filters. It was in this newly opened space that I remembered something I had lost: reading. Books that had been sitting on my shelf for months finally came to life in my hands. I read without rushing, without the need to check my phone after every chapter. Time seemed to expand. The words enveloped me in a way I hadn't felt since childhood. And then I started writing too. Simple things, random thoughts, reflections, snippets that came to mind that had previously been stifled by digital overload. Silence became a fertile field for creativity, no longer an uncomfortable space to be filled. The digital cleanse wasn't easy. It exposed my dependence, my impulses, and the emptiness I was trying to fill with clicks and taps. But at the same time, it showed me that there was another possible rhythm of life, more intentional, more present, more human. I learned that it wasn't technology itself that was the problem, but the way I used it, and that to regain my attention and peace, I needed to make conscious choices. The turning point wasn't grand, it was silent. It was the moment I stopped chasing the next piece of content and began to rediscover the value of simply being. Part 3. Falling in love with reading again. As the days of my digital declutter stretched into weeks, something beautiful and unexpected began to unfold. I started falling in love with reading again. Not skimming, not scanning, not rushing through articles on a screen, but truly reading. Deep, focused, immersive reading, the kind I hadn't experienced since childhood, when books felt like portals and I could lose hours in a single chapter. At first, it felt unfamiliar. My mind, still detoxing from years of hyperstimulation, resisted, but slowly, the resistance gave way to rhythm. I began to read again, not because I had to, but because I genuinely wanted to. I pulled books off my shelves that had been gathering dust for years. Fiction that once made my imagination soar. Philosophy that challenged me. Biographies that told stories of quiet resilience. I wasn't just consuming information, I was connecting with ideas. I began to realize how shallow my reading habits had become under the influence of digital life. I used to read headlines, summaries, and short bursts of content, never sitting with a thought long enough for it to change me. But now, with the noise turned down, reading became more than a habit. It became a refuge. There was something sacred about the stillness that accompanied each reading session. No pop-ups, no alerts, no multitasking, just me, the page, and the words flowing through my mind like a conversation with someone wiser. I noticed I started to retain more, reflect more, and even speak more thoughtfully. My vocabulary, my ability to focus, even my empathy, all seemed to grow the more I read. Books weren't just entertaining me, they were rewiring me. One particular moment I'll never forget was reading outside on a quiet afternoon. No phone, no background noise, just the sound of wind in the trees and the turning of pages. It hit me then. This was what I had been missing. This deep engagement, this sense of time slowing down, of truly being with myself and the story. It wasn't just about learning something new. It was about remembering who I was before I gave my attention away to devices and platforms that profited from my distraction. Over time, reading became a kind of daily ritual, a grounding practice. Sometimes it was a few pages in the morning, with coffee, other times long chapters before bed, but always without interruption. The more I read, the more I realized how much my brain craved depth. Not the endless scroll of shallow novelty, but the weight and richness of sustained attention. Digital minimalism didn't just give me back my time, it gave me back my capacity for presence. And with that, books became not just an escape from the noise, but a way to reclaim a part of myself that had been slowly fading. Part 4. If rediscovering reading was like remembering a long-lost friend, embracing silence felt like meeting someone I never knew I needed. In the early days of my digital declutter, silence was unsettling. I had spent so many years using noise, music, podcasts, videos, endless chatter online to fill every corner of my day that the absence of sound felt almost threatening. It was as if silence exposed things I had buried under years of distraction, old emotions, unprocessed thoughts, difficult questions. But instead of running from them, I sat with them. And slowly, the fear began to fade. At first, I noticed silence, in small spaces, in the morning before anyone else was awake, during quiet walks without earbuds, in those few minutes after finishing a chapter of a book and just letting the ideas linger. I began to realize how rare silence had become in modern life, and how essential it was. Silence wasn't empty, it was full of clarity, of rest, of awareness. Without the constant flood of stimulation, I could finally hear the voice beneath all the noise, my own. As the weeks went on, I began to crave those silent moments. They weren't boring, they were liberating. In silence, I didn't feel the pressure to perform or produce. I didn't feel the need to know what everyone else was doing. I wasn't trying to catch up or keep up. I was simply being. For the first time in a long time, my mind had space to wander, to make connections, to breathe. I started journaling. More, sometimes just a few lines, sometimes pages, because thoughts that once got buried under digital clutter now had room to surface. Silence also deepened my relationships. Without my phone constantly buzzing or my attention divided, conversations became more meaningful. I listened better. I was more present. I noticed things, small changes in someone's tone, the light in their eyes, moments of hesitation I might have missed before. Even being alone felt different. Loneliness was replaced by solitude, and solitude, I discovered, is where creativity is born, where healing happens, where direction becomes clear. There's a certain kind of strength that grows in silence, a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need constant feedback or external validation. The more comfortable I became with silence, the less reactive I felt. I didn't need to respond to everything. I didn't need to have an opinion on every trending topic. I could observe without jumping in. I could choose stillness over noise, depth over distraction. And in doing so, I started to feel more grounded, more focused, more myself. Looking back, I never expected digital minimalism to lead me here, to silence, to peace, to presence. But now I understand. Silence isn't something to escape from. It's something to return to. It's not an absence, it's a foundation. And in a world that constantly demands our attention, choosing silence is a radical act of self-respect, one that has changed my life in ways I'm still discovering. The modern world isn't going to slow down. The noise, the speed, the endless stream of updates, it will all continue. There will always be another notification, Another trending topic, another reason to keep scrolling. What changed wasn't the world. What changed was my relationship with it. I stopped asking how to keep up and started asking why I ever felt I had to. Digital minimalism didn't hand me a perfect life. It gave me something better, awareness. Awareness of how I spend my time. Awareness of what nourishes my mind. Awareness of the subtle difference between feeling connected and being consumed. It taught me to protect my attention like I would protect anything sacred, because it is sacred. In the silence, I began to trust my own thoughts again. In the stillness, I no longer needed constant stimulation to feel alive. I began to experience the quiet confidence of being fully present, without needing to prove or post or perform. And that inner shift changed everything. Now, I don't chase every distraction. I choose what I let in. I still use technology, but I use it with intention. I still connect, but I connect with purpose. The emptiness I once feared in quiet moments, I now see it as spaciousness, as possibility, as life itself undisturbed. We live in a time when reclaiming our attention is a radical act, when choosing depth over noise is a quiet rebellion. And in that rebellion there is peace, not a peace that comes from escape, but a peace that comes from alignment with our values, our rhythms, our truth. I don't need silence all the time. I don't need to read all day. But now I know how to return to that place when the world becomes too loud, and that, perhaps more than anything, is the real gift of this journey. The ability to pause, to breathe, and to remember that the most important signals never come from a screen, they come from within.